there, welcome to episode 18 of Little Big Knits. My name is Selma and I'm your host, and I live here in Canada in the city of Ottawa with my family and our cat Yoda, who occasionally makes an appearance. Welcome if you're a new viewer. I hope you'll enjoy, and thank you so much for coming back if you're returning. Thank you also to everybody who left comments last night and last time, which was a couple of weeks ago. I always enjoy interacting and hearing what you have appreciated and so forth. So thank you so much. Just a reminder that we have a Ravelry group, and that is where the knit-alongs are happening, which we have going on right now. We've got a Summer Fibers Cal going on, so you can join in over there. The show notes are there. There's an Ask Away thread over there, so feel free to come and join. If you're not a member of the group and you want to participate in the different things, please become a member. You just join. It's free, of course, and then you can join in. So yeah, just a reminder that we've got a knit along, crochet along going on right now called the Summer Fibers Cal. And the idea is that you knit with plant-based fibers, anything above 50 grams of yarn. So there's been everything in there from garments to shawls and socks, and I think there's a hat and different things. We've got quite a few projects already in there. And the fiber content, as I said, should be plant-based, about at least 45% plant-based. So 45% cotton or viscose or bamboo, hemp, linen, anything that is plant-based. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun already seeing what people are making and so forth. The chatter that's in the thread, some occasional frustrations that people are expressing or questions, and we try and answer them. So feel free to join in if you are so inclined. I certainly enjoy knitting with summer fibers when that season comes along, so and it seems to be here. It's very exciting. I hope you enjoyed the footage at the beginning. That was footage from Mother's Day, which was last weekend, so happy belated Mother's Day if you happen to celebrate. And I had a great day, I have to say. We had a lovely breakfast, and then we sat around the table and did melty beads. Actually, I was going to show them to you, and they're over there, so just a moment. I've sort of gotten discombobulated around here. So we sat around the table and I made a butterfly out of melty beads. You know, it's one of these things, it's plastic, but I really enjoy melty beads. So we have done them a lot. Isla made, she made a squirrel monkey. And I don't know if you can see, but hanging on our back door there is a garland of butterflies and birds and things that we've made in the past that are all very summery. And I've also made things like snowflakes and stuff like that, and I've been thinking about making a Christmas garland once we get to that point, because I made some all kinds of little shapes. Somehow I just really enjoy melty beads, and so this is another craft that we've been doing around here. And then, as you saw in the footage, we went for a walk in the forest with all the leaves that are starting to come out and the trilliums that are blooming, and there were a few chickadees waiting for some seeds, and it was just lovely. The beaver, who was nowhere to be found. In fact, I'm not sure that that beaver dam is actually in use right now. There is, in that place where we go, it's called Stony Swamp, and it's kind of on the green belt of the Ottawa area. They have sort of two swampy areas, and both of them had a dam. One of them now is just being covered with grass. The swampy area seems to be disappearing, and that one I'm not so sure. So anyway, that was oodles of fun. Then we went down to what they call the Byward Market here in Ottawa for dinner, and walked around Majors Hill Park, which is where the other footage was from. And you could see the Parliament buildings and the National Gallery, and a beautiful church whose name is completely escaping me right now. So anyway, that was that. It was a lovely day, and beautiful, beautiful weather. So that's what I shared with you at the beginning of the podcast. So today I am going to start with whips instead of with finished objects, because we're going to finish with a finished object and talk a little bit about this sweater that I'm wearing, and talk about a potential new knit along that I was thinking about starting with regards to this sweater. And then we had a question about ease, so I thought I would address that in the group, share a couple of books that I have from the library, and a couple of patterns that I've received, and tell you a little bit about the Tulip Festival. So that's what I've got on my agenda for today. So here we go. But before we start, I just want to tell you I'm drinking an awesome cup of tea in my Hello Lovely cup that I just so enjoy. It's just such a great pink. I am drinking this tea by David's Tea, which is now fallen, and I actually just finished the bag with this cup of tea. It is I think it's a new one that came out called Sparkling Sangria, and I think I bought this a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, and it's gone because we really enjoyed it. Super delicious tea. So that is what I'm drinking today. As you know, my voice tends to get a little bit hoarse at times, so I like to drink tea. All right, so we'll start with my Good Vibes shawl, which I had started last time, and I had hoped to finish before I podcasted, but I decided to podcast today because next weekend we're hoping to go to Quebec City to see my father and visit with him for a little bit, and the weekend after that I'm going to be taking my son to a soccer tournament outside of Montreal in a place called Boucherville. So the next couple of weekends are going to be quite busy. We are also in the process of getting my mother's house ready for sale, so I'll be there later today cleaning out, and I've got a couple of friends who are coming to join me in doing that, which is really great. And so it's just been really busy, and I thought, the house is empty. My son is away in Rochester, New York for this weekend for a soccer tournament, and my husband and my daughter are out, so I thought, podcast. So living in this sort of vintage Marimekko bag that my mother made eons and eons ago is my Good Vibes shawl. I have been very, very much enjoying knitting this shawl. I rarely knit a shawl in the same color as the original, but I just loved the original. And so I am knitting it. It is not on a very long needle, so it's going to be a little difficult to share a whole lot. But here is what it is coming out so far. The yellow is Fine Fish Yarns in her singles base in the butternut colorway, and the speckled cream, and I hope you can see the speckles because they are fabulous. That is Hedgerow Yarns in her new base called, I think it's called Merino 500, and this is a one-of-a-kind colorway. So when I saw it, I thought, I think that will work with the yellow, because you can't see them, I don't think. Oh, maybe you can. There are specks of yellow in there as well as pink and blue. So this is going swimmingly. However, I just realized yesterday I am on the second, in fact, I just finished the second last wedge. And the way a shawl like this goes as you're knitting down is that you are kind of doing short rows, and you're going back and forth, so that by the time I finish the short rows and the lace work, I should be close to the edge. But I've only got one wedge to go, and I've got a lot of stitches left. So I'm a little perplexed. I'm going to have to look at this today. I'm pretty sure I've been following the instructions like to the letter. So I'm not quite sure what's happened there. So I'll report back on that next time. I'm really hoping I don't have to rip this out. I'd be very upset if I had to rip out back to here. I think I had the right number of stitches, and maybe I just haven't read something quite right and I'll be fine next, but I'm a little bit nervous about this. So let's see, or I'll do an extra wedge and kind of flub it. I think I have enough yarn. So, but this is just going to be, it makes me think of breakfast for some reason. I think it's the yolk yellow or something, and the cream and berries, or, you know, it's a very, very spring shawl, and I'm just loving how the two yarns are working together. So I'm looking forward to this, and I hope it works out. I was a little concerned about how this single ply yellow and this loosely two ply cream, I think it's two ply, yeah, we're going to work together, but they're working beautifully together. So that's really, really great. And look, all the lace is lining up. So I don't know what I've done, and perhaps it's just a question of not having read the instructions, and I'm going to be just fine. And if not, I might try to modify and see if I can make it work. We'll see, because I definitely don't have enough yellow to make a huge border on the edge. I've got this much yellow left, and that should be enough for one more stripe and the border, maybe two more stripes in the border. I've got quite a bit of the pink, so if I have to do an extra wedge, I've definitely got enough of that. So we'll see what I end up having to do. I hate ripping things out and starting again. I am unlikely to do it, so let's see what happens. I was really looking forward to finishing this, so. But it's been an enjoyable knit, and so I'll report back on that. The other thing that I have been working on, and this is a new cast on that I have in the bag by Paradise Island in her Knitterati bag. So last time I showed you the Holst Garn Coast yarn in this blue called Harbor. So this is a 45% cotton and 55 lamb's wool in the Harbor colorway, which is this very kind of indigo blue color. And I wasn't sure whether I was going to make the Uyo dress from the Len magazine, or I was going to make I think it was the Sky cardigan from the Making magazine, and I decided to go for the Uyo dress from here. I was already sort of pondering whether I wanted to have another blue cardigan for the summer. I think I am going to make that cardigan. I think I am going to order some Holst at some point in kind of a fuchsia color. That's what I'm thinking for that cardigan. But let's see, I'm not going to do that right away. But I just wanted to show you the dress there. So that is a design by Heidi Kiermeier. No, Anke Strick, sorry. I often get those two designers mixed up. And she's always got great designs. This, I haven't gotten very far with this, and it's not on very big needles, so there's not a whole lot for me to show you. But it is coming out wonderfully. It's a beautiful blue. And I'm looking forward to it. The start of this sweater was a little bit more complicated than I expected it to be. There were different things happening in each section. So it required quite a bit of attention. Now it's becoming a little bit more potato chippy, but I've been focusing a lot on the shawl because I really wanted to finish that. But I'm really enjoying this. And it's interesting because I did the swatch. Let's see if I can show you. You can see this, I can really see how this bloomed and how the color really came out. I don't know if you can see the difference. But I can see that it bloomed a little bit. Here it feels a little bit, feels a bit like raw silk somehow. I don't know why. Whereas here it feels just a little bit softer and it's filled out a tiny bit. So I am very much looking forward to this finished item, and hopefully I'll get that shawl figured out and be able to move forward with this, because I'm looking forward to having that. I think it'll be a lovely summer tunic to wear as I said last time, I've got these white flowy linen pants. I think that would look really nice with it, or with like a little black skirt or leggings. So I'm looking forward to that. And I'm very happy to be trying out the Holst Garn yarn, because a lot of people have talked about them over the years, and I've wanted to try, and it is very reasonable price. It's yarn that comes from Denmark, but the yardage is incredible. It's a fine yarn for each little 50-gram skein, and it's very reasonably priced. So I'm glad to be finally trying that, and I'm very much enjoying my Knitterati bag. Yeah, and so that's essentially what I've been working on. Not a whole lot. Alejandro has also been working on his socks. And so here is a little video of him knitting, which he allowed me to take. I just think this is very interesting because I taught him how to knit, so he knits continental, as do I. But even still, there's such individual variation. Like, he holds his yarn, or he doesn't hold his yarn differently, but the way he manages each stitch and so forth is very different. So I just thought I would include that. So you can see, and he's moving forward on those socks little by little. So we'll see how that goes. So that is really all of the whips that I've got to share with you right now. Not a huge amount. As you know, I'm not one to knit on a variety of things. I tend to try and get 1 or 2 things done before I move on. I have been fantasizing like crazy. I haven't done any sewing. I don't have any sewing for you at all this week. I hoped that I would finish another skirt, but that hasn't happened. It's been really busy. But I've been like wanting to cast on so many things, wanting to sew so many things. I've just got, it's like my mind is manic with ideas. So let's see where we go next. But I still really try hard not to cast things on because I want to finish things. I went through a period when I was younger, because I've knit for many, many years and most of the time. There was a small period where I didn't knit when my kids were younger, and then I took it up again. So I went through this period where I didn't finish things, and that brought on a lot of sort of, you know, guilt and stuff like that. And I just don't want to have that. I want to be able to finish things. I want to knit things that I like and that I think I'm going to use or that I want to give to somebody, and I want to finish them and move on. Otherwise, I just start feeling like, what am I doing here? So that's why I really try hard to just have 1 or 2 things at a time. I admire the people who can have many things on, because quite honestly, I want to be knitting on many different things. But I just know that if I do that, things will end up in the corner and I'll lose interest, and we pay a pretty penny for a lot of our yarn. So anyway, that's my philosophy. So I don't tend to have a lot of things on the go, but my mind has been going crazy with ideas for knitting and sewing. So on to the finished object, which is this sweater that I finished. I showed it to you last time. I had finished it, but I hadn't sewn in the ends and wet it, and so I wasn't quite sure exactly how it was going to be. So since then, I have sewn in some of the ends and tied knots for some of the ends. This yarn is definitely an unruly yarn for that kind of thing. I had to take a thread. I had dropped a stitch at the join up here. Even though I had done the 3 needle bind off a couple of times, trying really hard not to lose stitches, I did anyway, and I just thought, you know what, I'm going to grab a black thread and I'm going to sew it through the yarn and kind of like get it in. So I did that up there. I was able to get some of the ends sewn in, but I decided to just tie some knots, especially for the ones that are around the torso. I think I've learned my lesson that when you're working with summery yarns that tend to show more than wool would, to really try and do things on the sides so that it's the least noticeable possible. But so anyway, I kind of put off sewing in all the ends because I knew it was going to be not the most pleasant experience, but I got it done. And then I wet it and I dried it to see what would happen with the edges, because you'll recall last time, if you watched, I was a little concerned that the edges were going to roll. In the end, it's actually great. I'll just get up so that you can see. I had started with one row and then a row of garter or pearl, and I was concerned that it was going to roll a lot, but it's rolling a tiny bit, but mostly it is really just lying pretty flat. I did a little bit of waist shaping. I did a little bit of a dolman thing here where I increased, and I slipped the first stitch on each row, and I was worried that it was going to roll horribly, but in the end it's actually just fine. I did short row shaping, which was a challenge with this yarn. I don't think it looks so great. And then a 3 needle bind off. And I did slip stitches along at the beginning of each row along the neck as well. And that sits really, really very nicely, and I'm very happy with that. So I have ended up with a top that I can wear. It's a little bit see-through at times, depending on where the light is coming from, but it is a light. I love the fabric that this yarn, this was the Barocco Mykonos, which is a, it was called a core spun yarn made out of linen, rayon, and cotton, and I very much like the fabric. It created kind of this shimmery fabric, and it's very cool feeling, the kind of thing to wear with a simple skirt. The skirt I got at a thrift shop the other day, or not a thrift shop, a consignment shop the other day. I just thought it was such a fun color. So, so here it is. It has worked out. I am very happy with the details. So last time I asked, would there be any interest in seeing this as a pattern or a recipe? And so there was some interest from a few people. So I thought it could be fun as an exercise for me, for sure, and maybe for you too, to have a knit along for this. So if you're interested in making a top like this, it's going to be a recipe, so it's going to be your own. You might decide to do the garter ridges, you might not. You might decide to do something quite different. But I will essentially walk you through making this top for yourself, sizing it for yourself, choosing the shape that you're going to want for the body, whether it is straight, hourglass shaping like I did, or A-line, and walking you through the whole process of how I made this so you can make one for yourself. So if you're interested, I am going to start a thread in the Little Big Knits group. So you'll need to be a member of the group to come in, and we will have a knit along there for this top, probably starting around June 1st. So if you're interested in doing this, you need to get yourself some sort of yarn for this top. A cotton could be fine, or a wool cotton blend. Actually, anything you like. You probably want something that's not too lofty, that's got a teeny weeny bit of drape for a summer top. I made this in the Barocco Mykonos, as I mentioned. It's a DK yarn, so you can make, you can use a DK yarn because you're going to swatch and figure out your sweater math. I'm going to make you do math. You can choose whichever yarn you want, really, and then we will figure this out together, and hopefully if you join in, you will have a sweater by July. So, so as I said, I'm going to start a thread, but if you're interested, what I'd like you to do is 2 things. I'd like you to PM me and give me your email address so that I can send you the recipe, which will probably come out in parts, just so you know. And also comment in the thread and I will be asking people to show the yarn they've chosen. And so this will really be a group thing. If there are 5 of you or 5 of us, that's fine. If there are 15, that's fine. I know that not everybody will necessarily want to knit this right now, but if you're open to or interested in doing this, let me know and we'll see how it goes. And this, it will be a nice opportunity for me to write down some of the ways I do things, and perhaps for you to figure out a top for yourself that you can then repeat in a variety of ways with other colors or motifs or whatever. So let's see how this goes. I'm slightly nervous and quite excited. And you'll kind of be test knitters and let me know how this recipe worked. Was it lacking in details? Do I need to add more to it? And then maybe eventually I'll actually publish it as a formal recipe. But for now, it's something that I'd like to share with you guys, whoever is interested in joining me. Okay, so I'm going to do a little wardrobe change right now because I want to show you another top that I made with essentially the same philosophy, but that is actually quite different. So I'll be back. Hey, so if you follow me on Instagram, by the way, I didn't mention this, but I'm Selma Knits on Ravelry as well as on Instagram. If you follow me on Instagram, you will have seen a picture of this week. During the Me Made May, I wore this with the skirt that I recently sewed, my first sewn garment. So I put on this t-shirt and I'm just going to show it to you in full. So as you can see, it's also got the lace on the back. Totally different from the other one in terms of details. This has ribbing, it's got a lace motif, it's got ribbing here, it's got ribbing here. But essentially the construction is the same. So we'll be talking about these, and I really like this one a lot. I'm actually thinking of making myself a second V-neck top this summer, another white one, because although you can't see it, this one is not really crisp white, and I think I'd like to have a crisp white one to go with my skirt. I don't know, we'll see. This one I made, I think it was called Viking Fibers Milk Yarn or something like that. It was a cotton milk fibers blend, which is essentially kind of like a rayon. And as a result, this cotton yarn really, I could tell that when I knit it, it was gonna be very drapey. So I ended up double stranding it with some lace weight linen that I have, which is actually a weaver's linen, but it's very fine, to give it a little bit of structure, which it did. However, I have to wash this sweater after every second wear because it really, especially down here, like right now it's good because I just washed it, but it will kind of loosen a little bit. And so I'd like to make another white one, and because really you need white t-shirts in your life, don't you? And I really enjoy the fit. This one, as I said, essentially the same thing. I did the math on this. It was kind of taken after a sweater that I made originally that kind of had this shape with some different stuff happening. And after I made that sweater, which was the Yana by Sarah Hatton, I'll put a picture here of me in that sweater. That one ended up a lot bigger and kind of tunic-like, and I wanted a little t-shirt. So I realized, okay, well, I can just figure it out myself and make something that's got a similar kind of shape, but that fits a little bit more closely. And so and then I realized after that, well, I can use that same philosophy for everything. So that's kind of the philosophy, the structure that I'm going to share in the recipe. This one was differently done. Rather than short row shaping here, it was kind of like cast off in steps. And so then the seam was sewn, and the cast offs, as you did them in steps, that kind of creates the short row shaping. But I actually prefer, or it sort of creates the effect of short row shaping, but I prefer the short row. Yeah, and then the ribbing kind of extends the sleeve a little bit, which I like. I'm not always so fond of my arms, I have to be honest. And so although this one, on the other one, I did a little bit of a dolman thing here where I extended the sleeve out because it wasn't going to have ribbing. This one does not have, it's just straight, and then we added the ribbing. So this is another top that I made in similar, and so we'll talk about these things in the recipe. So there you go. Hop on over if you're interested in joining in. So that is definitely the end of sort of my knitting. Since we're talking about sweater construction a little bit, somebody asked if I would talk a little bit about ease. I think I may have spoken a little bit about ease a few episodes ago, but it is, and I have to say, it was not something I ever really considered, probably until about 3 years ago, and I started realizing people kept talking about this ease thing, and at first I didn't quite understand what they were talking about, although I think I intuitively just did it. And they were talking about negative and positive ease and zero ease, and it took me a little bit to get what they meant. But essentially the ease is how much looseness you get from a sweater. So zero ease is something that essentially fits you around exactly. So if you are a 40-inch around the chest, then you have stitches for 40 inches. And I have to say that's generally how I function. I tend to choose zero ease, especially with summer tops, but even with winter sweaters, because I know there's always a bit of a relaxing that happens. And so the zero ease ends up with 1 or 2. It just always seems to work out that way for me. And so that's how I tend to operate. But if you decide that you wanted something to have, you know, much more looseness to it, you would be wanting positive ease in your sweater, and you would have to factor that in. So if you were going to knit a sweater, you would choose the size that had enough stitches to make, you know, those extra inches around the torso. If you wanted a very snug sweater, if you wanted it to be a tight sweater for a particular reason, then you would want to go with negative ease. So rather than having the number of stitches that you would need to get 40, you might want to have the number of stitches that you would need to get 37, so that it would actually become a tight sweater, and that would be called negative ease. People often knit socks with negative ease, right? We want our socks these days, actually, because my aunt knits socks and she doesn't knit them with negative ease really, and they're wonderful. So, but we tend to, and I certainly tend to knit socks that are snug. So really they have some negative ease because they are kind of knit tighter than the circumference of your foot, but then they stretch out and sort of envelop your foot. So the same thing would be for a sweater if you wanted it to be snug. So that, I hope that's a clear explanation about ease. But the number of stitches that you cast on will create the looseness of your sweater, right? So as I said, I tend to go for 0 because I just feel like there always ends up being a little bit of a relaxing process, and things just generally end up fitting, unless I want something to be quite loose. But generally things tend to work out that way. Or I might add a few extra stitches just to give it a little bit of extra, depending on what it is that I'm making or the fit that I'm looking for. So I hope that helps with ease. If it wasn't clear, let me know. I'm happy to explain a little bit more. So a couple of patterns that came into my life in the last couple of weeks. One is by LB Hand Knits, who is a member of the group, and knowing that I was in a yellow phase, she shared this pattern with me called Sunny Every Day. So I'm just posting a picture here. As you can see, it's a yellow sweater with kind of a Celtic cabley, kind of honeycomb cabley thing happening. and a cardigan. It's a lovely picture. So thank you very much. Another pattern that came into my life, I was commenting on Lou Lee, who is Lee Christensen, and she donated a prize during our Garment Cal. And by the way, I still have one prize for somebody to collect. So go and watch the prizes. Otherwise, I might draw again next time and choose another winner. And this was from the first sweater group, by the way. So there are not very many people in there. So anyway, Lee had posted a picture of some socks that she had made, and I loved the toe. And I knew that she had, I was pretty sure that she had made them toe up, and I was just like, I love the toe. And so she gifted me the pattern, and which is right here, the picture. And I am not knitting socks right now, but I am definitely thinking about the next vanilla pair that I want to make with great yarn. I'm going to use that toe. Because I love the idea of a round toe, and so it's nice to have a pattern for that. So thank you, Lee. And then lastly, yesterday, Marsha Ibuki, who is Fairy Little on social media, she came out with a new design called the Kettle Valley Poncho, which is super fun, uses 5 skeins of fingering yarn. So and it's a great stash busting. You could actually even use remnants if you wanted and kind of do it as stash, but you could do it as a fade. You could do it all one color or striped as she has it here in the picture. And it's just like a really fun poncho. So she gifted that to me. Thank you very much, Marsha. I'm like, trying to decide how I would make that, but I'm definitely in the mood for a poncho. So let's see if I get to that soon. So anyway, thank you for those patterns. So those are some patterns if you're interested in looking into. I have also taken, I've always got books coming out from the library. I'm a bit of a library addict, I have to say. I've got, actually, my little tripod is on 3 library books at the moment, so I can't show them to you, but I've taken out a whole bunch of sewing books. I've got the Tilly and the Buttons book from the library, and I've got some simple skirt books out in the library. I take all kinds of things, cookbooks and videos and music CDs, and I just really enjoy that. I enjoy looking at things, and then I find if I'm taking them out of the library several times, it probably means that I need to own it. So the 2 books that I've taken out of the library recently, and I just thought I would share them with you, and it's still got my pickup tag because you can order from the library and then you get it when it's available. I took out Stephen West's Best Knits book. And this is such a great book. It's got so many of his patterns in here, some of which I already own actually, but this is one that I own, which is the Slip and Slide, and somebody at work just recently made this. We've got a few knitters at work, and her version is beautiful, and so it's renewed my desire to make that. There's his Excuse Me shawl in here. His Exploration Station is in here. His Vertices Unite is in here. So if you are in the mood to Stephen West, let's just turn him into a verb. Let's Stephen West, shall we? This is a great book to have. And his patterns are really well written. It's got the dotted rays. It's got his Brio chevron wrap, and it's just really, really, and as you know, Stephen West always has crazy pictures and crazy colors, but what I love about his shawls is that even though he chooses crazy colors, you really don't have to, and you can make it as subtle or as monochromatic or as earthy or as crisp or as whatever you want. And they're just really interesting designs. And if you go and look at any of his designs, like the Exploration Station, you just see so many versions, ones with high contrast, ones with low contrast, but his designs are extremely well written. And if you just follow the instructions, you'll end up with a great shawl, because sometimes you wonder, how am I going to make that thing? But I really, really enjoy looking at this book, and I really enjoy my exploration station. It's a wonderful shape, and have actually been thinking about making another one. But yeah, I just wanted to see what was in here, and it's just full of just wonderful, wonderful. This one, which is crazy, but I really like it. I think it would be a very interesting shawl to wear. It's called the Color Craving Shawl. So yeah, he's just got a gazillion. This one, which is actually a very, very simple one, called, what's this one called? Striped Bolting. But it's, you know, it's actually quite a subtle shawl. So that's a book that I took out of the library that I've been very much enjoying. The other one that I took out of the library is a Stitch dictionary that came out recently. And I was surprised to get it so quickly. It's by Wendy Bernard. And Stitch dictionaries, there are many out there. Vogue Knitting has a whole series that is great, that I really like, and I have. There are some other really great, there's another one that is just not, I can't remember the name of it right now, but that I have as well. But I wanted to see this one, which recently came out. It's called The Knitting All Around Stitch Dictionary. And as you can see from the squares, there is everything from kind of more, it's not color work, what do we call that now? Mosaic knitting. There's a whole section on mosaics. So that, as well as cables, as well as lace, as well as garter and stockinette types of patterns. And I've been looking at this because I want to design a vest for myself. I showed you guys at one point, if you happen to remember, some Rowan tweed that I have. Felted tweed and DK, and I want to make myself a vest. So I have been looking at different types of stitches that I might employ. So I really like this one here. I thought that could make a great vest stitch. Or I kind of like this one as well. I just won't show the, which kind of creates diamonds, which could be really nice on the front of a vest. So yeah, there's just a whole bunch, great different types. They show different types of cables. So there are, I don't even know how many, 150 pattern stitches in here, and some really, really interesting ones. So I've been enjoying looking through it and thinking about what I could use the stitches for. This is a lace one that I just really like. Very, very simple lace. I don't even know why I earmarked that page, but I just really liked that. So there's some simple ones, there's some more complicated ones. I would say that most of them in here are quite accessible. The Vogue Knitting one that I have has far more complicated ones in it. In here, there's just a lot of really, really simple. Here's a slip stitch herringbone kind of stitch. So yeah, great for thinking of ideas. If you are a washcloth knitter, for example, it's a great way to practice different stitches. And there are a few patterns in here as well. Like here is a sweater pattern, and I think there's a hat pattern, and there are a few patterns, not too many. There's a very sort of simple shawl in here as well. So it's a neat little book. Oh, and here is a mosaic cowl. Yeah, so these are two books that I've had out from the library that I thought I would share with you. And I think that's what I've got to share with you today. I had hoped to share some sewing, but as I said, I haven't gotten to the sewing machine. The sewing machine came back from the shop. She showed me all the things I was doing wrong. Like I wasn't doing the bobbins properly, and that was the main cause of my problems. So I have learned a little bit, and they were very generous, and it was my first time taking the sewing machine in, so it was free, which was great. So hopefully I'll be able to have some sewing next time, at least finish the second skirt that I started during my skirt course, and maybe start on something else as well. We'll see. Right now, as I think I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, we are in the process of putting my mother's house on sale. My mother moved out of her house about 2.5 years ago to live in an assisted living facility, which is really close by to here, which is great. When she moved out, she had a couple of boarders, and so we let them stay in the house and they paid rent. Now the last boarder is moving out. He's gotten married, and they're actually moving into this neighborhood too, because my mother's house is kind of on the other side of the city. So we need to get this house on the market because I'm not interested in dealing with tenants. And my mother is fine to sell the house. I've asked her a couple of times in the last couple of years, and before she said I'm not ready, and now she said, yeah, we can sell the house. So we're going to sell the house. So that requires cleaning out. And I have to say, I don't have much attachment to that house. My mom bought that house when I had already moved out. So I have no attachment to the house and the majority of the furniture, but I have a lot of attachment to little items, and many of those items I realize are things that my mother has made, that my aunt has made, that my grandmother made. And I started to realize, holy cow, I come from a line of crafters. And I kind of thought it'd be really fun to share some of those crafts with you. I've also had a request to share some of the art and crafts in my house. So hopefully I'll do that at some point. Kristen, I know you asked to see some of the art, and I just haven't gotten to that yet. So I was going to do that today, but I'm just not mentally quite organized enough with it. But I will share some of that, because there was some pretty amazing crafting that has happened in the women in the generations in my family. Oddly, not everybody in my generation's a crafter. In fact, I think I may be the only one from my Finnish side of the family. Maybe there's somebody else who does some crafting, but I seem to be the one who has gone whole hog on it. And any craft, whether it's melty beads or sewing or a little bit of cross stitching or pastels. I've done a lot of stuff throughout my life. So actually, I don't know if you can see, I showed you once Yado but I did, it's a really dark pastel, and I should get it out of there, but I did a portrait of my dad years ago that's there, but there's some pottery up there that I did, and I've just done all kinds of different crafts. I did this sort of flower garland out of felting a few years ago. And so it was just really neat to realize that it's just something that's in my blood. And now I understand why I can't help myself from crafting. I can't stop myself from crafting. And so perhaps next time I'll show you some of those things that they have made, that were made in their lifetimes. So we're doing that a lot, but it's also been just beautiful. Spring has sprung. Everything is green and pink and yellow and white and just absolutely stunning. Every spring I wait for the magnolia, and I like the white magnolia and I like the pink magnolia, but the magnolia that really steal my heart are the yellow magnolia. And so I'm just posting a little video here of magnolia. There are 2 yellow magnolia trees in my neighborhood, and I drive or ride or walk by them regularly to take in the magnolia, because they're just so beautiful, and they last a few days and then it's over. But yesterday was Friday, and we went to the tulip festival. Ottawa has a tulip festival that is every May, every year. It lasts for a couple of weeks, and there are beautiful tulip sort of beds of different colored tulips all over the city in particular areas, especially. And so yesterday we went to an area called Dow's Lake. Now, this whole tulip festival started after the Second World War. Canada harbored the Dutch royal family, and they, I think, did some sort of a tulip gift garden to Canada after, I think, in 1945 or 1946. And then in the early 50s, I think it was Karsh, the photographer, who suggested, apparently, that there be a tulip festival. And so the tulip festival has been going ever since. So I'll be ending the episode with some sights from the tulip festival. As I said, it's at a place called Dow's Lake. We have a canal here in Ottawa. It's called the Rideau Canal, and it ends at Dow's Lake. So there's a little bit of footage of that as well. So I hope you enjoy that. I really enjoy, I'm starting to see the city in a very different way, taking little snippets and sharing them with you. So I hope you enjoy that. I really enjoy putting it together. So I will leave you with that. And I think that's it for today. So take care, friends, and we'll see you probably sometime in June when it'll be a 1-year podiversary. Happy podiversary. So we'll see you then. Take care. All the best to you. Happy crafting. Bye.